Well, I guess we'll take the wins where we can get them, and it was a big win last night in Boston. And as a Leaf fan, there's not too many. I can't remember a kind of a clinching, momentous game like that. The Leafs in Boston, that has been not a happy place. So for Canada to beat the United States in overtime in Boston, that was quite a thrill. Really, it was. And look, for me to stay up and watch a hockey game, that says something, because it's not nothing that I generally do not do anymore. I'll watch playoff hockey and in its entirety when the Leafs are in it, and for the short amount of time that the Leafs are usually around. But for me to be that engaged and that interested in a hockey game, Kelly watched much of it as well. So non-hockey fans and hockey fans like it. It was an international moment, which I think we needed. I mean, what's its true impact? Will it actually change anybody's lives in any way? Probably not. But I mean, that's what sports is all about. It's esprit de corps. It brings us together. It's a gathering place. There's something about the sporting spectacle that is special. Emotion, pride, all of those things, and at a time in which Canada needs some of that. We needed a shot in the arm, and we got it. And it was quite an effort, I must say. Exceptional hockey. Just the skill on display was great, and I was glad that there were no fights and shenanigans and foolishness like that. They got that out of the way the first night they met last Saturday. I assumed that they were gonna get down to business, and they did. But what can you say about Binnington in net for the Canadians? He basically won the game for them. I mean, look, it was without Binnington making some of those saves, especially in overtime. I think 6 saves in overtime, including just one absolutely robbed Austin Matthews at least once. But really, really stepped up, and that's what you need. That's generally what wins games in tight playoff games, playoff type games like this, is goaltending. Time and time again, when you look at who wins, it's usually the best goaltender wins the game. Generally, that's how it works when teams are that closely matched. And I would say that if those two teams lined up and played 20 games, they'd probably split them 10-10. That closely matched up. Really, it was a spectacular game. And for McDavid to win it in overtime, I mean, you want to talk about wide open. How does Connor McDavid that wide open? How did somebody blow something that bad? And it looks like Austin Matthews was the guy that should have been covering him. And I mean, you give McDavid that much room and that good of a look, he's going to score. He's not going to miss that. And Mitch Marner, Toronto Maple Leaf, of course, fed him the pass, which was a nice. So that put Marner in the picture for both overtime wins. Sweden, of course, he scored the overtime goal, which was an essential win in a short tournament like that. You needed that win or they wouldn't have been there. And then to set up McDavid last night, just exceptional. But really no bad takeaways at all from it. I think it was, I just think it was a great spectacle. So one of the things that I'll ask you when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time is, did you watch? Where did you watch? And where do you think this stands or ranks when it comes to Canadian hockey history? Is it up there with the 72 series? Is it up there with the Salt Lake gold medal game? Does it rank with the Sid's golden goal in Vancouver? Some of the Canada Cups in the 80s, perhaps? Where do you put this when it comes to international hockey? And why does it matter to you? Fundamentally, why does it matter that Canada does well at these events? Because it matters to us. And it's kind of an undefinable thing that's going on. Like I said, trying to figure out what it is. Is it emotion? Is it pride? Is it the fact that we're getting kicked in the teeth pretty good right now by Donald Trump in the United States? With the tariffs and with all the constant 51st state garbage that he continues to spew? Was it perhaps all of those things combined? And also, Are you taking part in this newfound Canadian pride? Are you getting caught up in it? Because for many, this is a time when you feel that you are being attacked, that is a time in which esprit de corps and pride comes into play. And it plays into, of course, the timing of this was exceptional with this hockey game and this tournament in general, and this matchup in particular. But are you getting swept up in newfound Canadian pride? And also, when it comes to Americans, has your opinion of Americans changed as a result of this? And is that fair? I mean, there's a good argument out there to say that, look, this is the president of the United States and his counterpart and his cohorts and those people that he's surrounding himself with that are making these decisions and are applying these tariffs and attacking this country that should not represent all Americans, all nearly 400 million Americans. So is it fair to have a negative outlook on Americans as a result of this? Because a new poll suggests that more than a quarter of Canadians, 27%, as a matter of fact, now see the United States as an enemy country, while another 30% still say they consider the U.S. an ally. Another 27% of respondents to the Leger survey say they consider the United States to be a neutral country. So has your opinion moved on when it comes to Americans and how you view Americans? Are you planning to not visit, or have you altered plans to visit the United States? Do you shop with the mindset of buying Canadian first? Do you make the effort to do so? Will you pay more to not buy American products? When it comes to groceries, it's a difficult thing to do because we know that groceries, produce in particular, this time of year, most of it, no, I don't know what percent of it is, but certainly a good percent of it, comes from California and places like that, and Florida, orange juice. And you don't have a lot of choice if you want to eat healthy produce this time of year in particular. And in summer, it's different. You can go to farmers markets and things like that as options. But anyway, some things that you can talk about when we open the phone lines. Also, the Auditor General, Nova Scotia's Auditor General, who will join the show in just a little bit, want to talk about that as well. The Nova Scotia Auditor General wants the provincial government to withdraw a bill that allows her to be fired without cause. We talked about this yesterday. Got a lot of emails on this, and not one response, not one email, not one call supported this move from the Houston government. Kim Adair told reporters yesterday the proposed changes threaten her independence and permit the government to veto the release of any report it does not like. An auditor can be removed with the assent of 2/3 of the legislature, but the government's bill would drop the requirement that just cause be provided before the termination. So, again, I called this outrageous and egregious yesterday, and I stand by that. The fact that the Auditor General, we know, has an integral role in democracy. Everybody needs to be accountable, held accountable, including government, certainly at a time when it has a supermajority like this, probably more so than ever. So, do you support Kim Adair in wanting to have this bill withdrawn? I do. Hands down, I think it's a no-brainer. And the fact that the government wants to get the information 2 weeks before it's released and then has the ability to censor it or not release it at all, to me, that just smacks of abuse of power. It truly does. Also, in the same vein, I saw this story this morning on our website. The Nova Scotia government has taken a giant step backward in accountability and transparency with the introduction this week of a contentious omnibus bill, political observers and access to information experts say. Among other things, and we talked about this, the bill will make it possible for the Premier to fire the Auditor General without cause, effectively eliminating the independence of a key officer of the legislature, said David Johnson, a professor of political science at Cape Breton University. He says it's an example of enormous and unwarranted executive overreach. Quote, there's a desire from the Premier to control the message. It's sad that the Premier is seeking to have this type of control, to turn an independent officer into an employee of the Premier's office. It smacks of control mania. So does absolute power corrupt? Absolutely, and I would say that it does. It plays out time and time again. Whenever you give anybody too much control, too much power, too much authority, they tend to use it and abuse it. We've seen this countless times, and we're watching it again. So what are the alternatives, I suppose? Look, the argument could be made. Some of you could make the argument that they campaigned. And although they did not campaign on this type of bill with the Auditor General or reviewing or reenacting extraction of natural resources, including uranium and fracking and hydraulic fracturing, they didn't campaign on that, but they still won the election. And they have a 2/3 majority, a strong mandate given to them by the public, by the electorate in Nova Scotia. So that perhaps, look, this is what we asked for. This is what we banked on. This is what we looked for. Therefore, this is democracy at work. Let it play out. And what are the alternatives? Right? You've heard the old saying, of course, democracy is the worst form of governance except for all the rest. I'm paraphrasing it. That's not exactly the quote, and I do believe it was Winston Churchill who said it initially, but it's true. What are the alternatives? So these are some things that, again, you can talk about when we open the phone lines in about, between 11 and 12, and you can get into whatever else you'd like to talk about also, again, on an open hour, and look forward to taking your calls. We've had a busy week on the phones and expect to get quite a few more calls today and lots of emails as well. By the way, if you want to send me emails, I do read them all. I don't respond to all of them just because of the sheer volume of emails, but I do promise you that I read them all. And the way to reach me is todd.veinotte@rci.rogers.com. Again, todd.veinotte@rci.rogers.com. That is the email address. That is the way to get a hold of me. And later in the show, we'll be talking to Tim Powers, so I'll get his take on all of this also. And, of course, what's continuing to go on federally with the Liberals. That's another debate as well. Interesting development there. And Mark Carney. And there's a debate coming up next week, French and English debates, which will be interesting. I'll be checking those out for sure. So Tim Powers will join us. And lots of other things coming up as well in the show. Look forward to chatting with you, as mentioned, when we open the phone lines between 11 and 12. Thanks to Vanessa Vandeness as well on the other side of the glass of the control boards. Doing a fine job as always. All right, when we come back, a chat with Kim Adair. We'll be back. All right, Kim Adair is Nova Scotia's Auditor General, joins me for a chat. Kim, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good morning. I'm glad to speak to you this morning.
Yeah, it's been quite a week for you, no doubt, eh?
Yeah. It kind of took a turn for quite a tailspin and roller coaster this week, but we're working our way through it.
All right, so you were given no warning at all before this budget was tabled, and nothing, no warning at all about this?
So late Monday afternoon, I was given a first indication that the government planned to table this on Tuesday, which was budget day, and included in the day was the plan to amend the Auditor General Act. So no consultation prior to that.
Okay, so let's talk about the bill itself. What's included in this bill?
Well, it's a significantly alteration to the way my office operates right now, which right now the Act is very solid in my view and contains all the necessary elements. But what the main elements of this proposal is that we'll still do our audits, but when it comes to reporting to the public, like right now we do 6 to 8 reports, and we table them in the legislature in their public reports. This amendment will prevent me from that process because there's a number of, I'll call it veto powers, where the government can take measures to prevent me from tabling the report or make changes to the report, or if the report does get tabled, it's private, and so the public won't know the work of the office. So that's the reporting piece. The other piece attached to that, which is concerning, is the fact that they will now, through a 2/3 vote of the legislature, be able to dismiss me without cause.
All right. Are there any other jurisdictions, other provinces in which that law that's on the books?
In terms of the dismissal of the Auditor General, there are 2 with similar provisions, but on the flip side, there are 9, including Nova Scotia, that do have the you can only be dismissed by a 2/3 vote with cause.
Okay, so on the reports themselves, under these changes, the government would get them 2 weeks in advance, and then have the ability to redact or censor them entirely. Is that what's going on here? Yes,
and what we're just trying to understand it all now, but I think you've paraphrased it quite well. But what I would like to point out is that we already have a process in place with every report that the government and the deputies do have the report well in advance, and we have many exchanges with them, so they're able to brief their minister throughout that process. So I don't understand the reason for this new additional 2 weeks, but there is an element there where the cabinet minister can raise a concern at that stage, which is, the elected officials who typically don't have a say in the work of the Auditor General as we're getting ready to table a report.
All right. So if you're going to be ready to table a report, so the operating practice as of now is that cabinet and government does get a look at this before the public sees it. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, because it's very important that we vet the draft report, and we also will go through the recommendations with the department and work with them to make sure that they're fair and practical and reasonable. We have a very iterative process, which it's very important that we're fair, and we also make sure we get our facts right, and we do that through this sharing of the draft reports well in advance. And we listen and we make changes when it's appropriate to do so. But right now, it's a judgment, my professional judgment, because I am independent and objective, to say there are going to be occasions when we agree to disagree, and it's appropriate to leave that in order to hold the government accountable.
Have there been requests to remove or to not release information in the past from cabinet, from government?
Well, I would say through that process I've just described, we've always been able to work it through, but there's no situation in my knowledge, though the office has been around for over 100 years, where it's come to a point where it goes before the Supreme Court, and there is a mechanism in the current legislation, if there is a serious dispute or difference of opinion, that either party can go to the Supreme Court. So that's why some of these other elements of the bill that are in there, I don't understand why they're kind of making that the call of the Attorney General, which is someone who's inside government,
right?
Instead of going to the courts.
Wow. Okay. So an entire report could be shelved and not see the light of day is under these changes. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Wow. And it's pretty evident to me why that's a problem. But I'll ask you why does that concern you?
Well, the reason for your Auditor General is to be able to hold the government accountable and encourage transparency. And our reports go to public accounts, and then they have a process to make sure they call the departments in and answer the questions and encourage them or pressure them to implement the recommendations. So if it's all private, undercover, it's just not going to work the way it's intended in our system of government.
Okay, and the dismissal component to it. I'm reading out of the Chronicle Herald here. Premier Tim Houston, speaking with reporters Wednesday, said the government is not doing anything to impact the ability of the Auditor General to do their job in any way, shape, or form. He described the changes as leveling up with some practices that are already in place and work well in other provinces, and said nothing in the legislation constitutes a threat to the Auditor General. Says nobody's threatening the auditor. That's just life. Everybody's accountable. I'm accountable to the people. The members of the legislature are accountable to the people. We go through elections. People who report to the ledge are accountable to the people of the legislature. That's not a threat. That's just life. Everybody's accountable in the jobs they do. What's your response to that?
Well, I think it's important to understand I don't want to make this adversarial in any way. What I have asked for is that they withdraw the bill, that they consult with my office. We understand what their underlying concerns are, and let's figure out a solution where I can maintain the independence of the office, and we can all continue on, and we can all do our job here at the Auditor General's office independently and objectively without any bias.
When he says he's not threatening the auditor, do you believe that? Do you feel threatened? I don't mean physically or anything like that, but is it threatening?
I am extremely concerned with the elements of this bill for Nova Scotians. I think they expect an Auditor General that can do their job and do it well. So, yeah, we're dealing with this one day at a time. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that we will be able to. I appear at law amendments next week. That will be my opportunity to speak specifically with elected officials on the bill. Mm-hmm. So, and I think it's important that Nova Scotians, I hope they're tuned in and listening, and if they have concerns about the independence of their Auditor General, I would encourage them to make it known. How do
you select what you're going to audit? What's the process?
It's ultimately my decision, mm-hmm. But there's many things we take into consideration. We call it, I guess, a good way to sum it up is significance and impact. So we try to choose topics that are significant to Nova Scotians and that we ultimately can make recommendations that will impact the system to improve government program and services. So there's all kinds of things. We take suggestions from the public. Mm-hmm. We listen to what is going on in the House of Assembly.
So I guess the question that would lead to this is that let's say that these changes go through and this legislation passes, and he does not repeal this in any way, and this goes as is. Does that impact or influence how you do your job? Would it impact or influence how you go about doing your job?
Well, I can only talk about me personally. My integrity is everything to me. Mm-hmm. I would continue to function in the future the same as I am today. Yeah. And whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. Any word? Has government responded in any way to your request?
No, but I'm hopeful that next week will be a different story.
Yeah, for sure. Can you have a meeting with the Premier? Does that happen from time to time?
I would like to meet with the Premier.
Have you made a request?
No.
Okay, but I'm assuming that you will, or open some dialogue here?
Right now I'm focused on the Law Amendments Committee. That's my avenue, from what I understand. So.
Okay, and when will you meet with the Law Amendments Committee?
Early next week. It's not been scheduled yet. I believe it's on Monday sometime.
Okay, and that's where you'll make your pitch to have this to discuss what we've just gone through.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Kim. Listen, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for doing this, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Take care. Kim Adair, Nova Scotia Auditor General. Tim Powers when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, joining us is Tim Powers, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. Tim Powers, are you weary from watching that hockey game last night, or what?
Todd, I'm weary but wonderful, and even Marner didn't manage to screw it up. He actually assisted on the tying goal. So,
That's
Todd,
true.
maybe for one brief moment, the Leafs did something useful. And as you can see, it was the Senators who kept the Americans in the game. So, what to think?
That's true. And from what I'm hearing, Austin Matthews blew the coverage on McDavid as well. So there's another Leaf connection right there.
Oh, Todd, and it's official now. Your buddy, he's left New York. He's wandering around for a team. Maybe the CFL will pick up Aaron Rodgers. What do you think?
That'd be huge. That'd be absolutely huge in the CFL. Why not?
The new Halifax franchise that's been promised since you and I have been living could have him as the starting quarterback.
Exactly. I think they were going to call them the Schooners, weren't they? Wasn't that the name, the Schooners?
It was. I was involved with that with one of the groups I got. I wish it would happen. It would be great because the support has always been good for the CFL and Atlantic Canada. But being in the CFL, both as a fan and an owner, is not for the faint of heart.
No, that's for sure. That's for sure. All right, where does this rank? I guess last night. I mean, look, this is obviously at a hyper tense time between the two countries. More so in Canada than the United States. More on the line, I suppose, for national pride. But what's this do? A shot in the arm? Where do you intrinsically put this win?
I think it's a shot in the arm for all of us right now. I think, look, we're all probably pretty tired of Trump's 51st state goading and Governor Trudeau, whether you like Trudeau or not, he'd be calling him Governor Carney or Governor Pierre Poilievre if either of those figures were in office. So I think it's helpful, and it's nice for us to be able to gloat a little bit. It's not going to do anything as it relates to pushing back tariffs or slowing down Trump. But hey, sometimes you need to feel like something positive has happened, and with all the political pressure hanging over that game, good on Canada, good on the Nova Scotia boys too. I mean, Crosby, Marchand, McKinnon, who won MVP, they all did Atlantic Canada proud in that tournament.
Yeah, is there any way to neutralize Trump and this routine that he's got going on about the 51st state, or is it something that we're just going to have to put up with? Do you ignore it? Do we respond to it? I mean, we talk about it every day. He brings it up. We bring it up here in the media, and I talk about it on the show, and it gets brought up. I mean, are we not part of the problem by parroting this line?
Well, it's an interesting point, right? Donald Trump thrives on attention. He thrives on driving the conversation, whether, the conversation is sensible enough. It'd be fascinating if people just ignored him. I don't know how possible that is, given he is the president of the United States and he can make life very difficult for people. But I thought Stephen Harper, there's an op-ed he's put out in the Globe and Mail today, had some points on that, like, bite your tongue a little bit, focus on what we need to do, don't give Trump oxygen, and there's something to that advice.
Yeah, I saw a story, let's see here, Frank Bayless kind of made the comments, or sort of along the same vein, suggesting that the Prime Minister and the Premiers made the mistake with Trump by going down to Mar-a-Lago even before he was in the White House officially, and kind of legitimizing him in a way that we are partially responsible in our response to him. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with him, with Bayless, or on that at all?
I think Frank Bayless is trying to get in the leadership debate there. Look, no, I don't agree with him. I think, look, you have to try and talk to people, and you have to try and forge relationships, and you have to try and figure out what the hell is really going on, right? Yeah. And I think you can't ignore the problem. You have to recognize, maybe I give Bayless one little point, that you could be used as part of the drama. But I think the premiers represent 13 parts of the country, and those parts of the country are all feeling a little anxious right now. And if they're just sitting on their backside saying, oh, it'll all work itself out, that probably wouldn't play well politically in their own jurisdictions.
All right. Speaking of these, of the race and the debates, I believe it's next week, the French and English debates. Yep. Anything that you're looking, is there any possible room for movement for anybody here? Kind of a big moment, or is this kind of the dive and cast already here with this whole thing?
Well, I think the thing I'm most looking forward to is to see how Chrystia Freeland will perform. Look, if all the stuff we're seeing is to be believed, Mark Carney has a big lead, whether it be the money he's raised, the number of donors he apparently has, the number of endorsements he got. And of course, he got a big one yesterday from Dominic Law from our part of the world, New Brunswick in Atlantic Canada, and that's a big one. If she is as behind as these signs suggest, does she go for the jugular with Mark Carney? Because there's a risk in that. Laurie Turnbull at Dalhousie, who you've interviewed on numerous times, wrote a good piece this week about how the debates may be a bit different in as much as they may be a place where the Liberals will want to allow Carney to shine brightly, because for most Canadians, if they choose to look in, though they will probably hear audio clips on your show and video clips elsewhere, this will be the most they've seen of Carney, the politician. So, does Chrystia Freeland try and run him down for her own benefit, or does she take a different approach and focus on the bigger issue of Trump? Well, look, we saw in the Conservative leadership debates, you'll remember that, the big punch-ups between Charest and Poilievre, for different reasons. Those things happened. What happens here? I mean, you get an outlier like Ruby Dalla, who will, just fire all manner of punch at Carney and Freeland, but I don't think that'll get the same attention as Chrystia Freeland going after Mark Carney, should she choose that route. That would be fascinating.
Okay, if not for Mark Carney, let's suggest that Mark Carney had no interest in this, and his name didn't emerge here. Mm-hmm. How might this have changed this whole leadership?
Well, and then I think you might have seen, other candidates enter. I think when Dominic LeBlanc decided not to go in, and Mark Carney was in, I think that scared off a lot of other candidates. So it would depend who put their name in there. Mm-hmm. I think what's fascinating for me is that old saying is true, right? She who wields the knife doesn't wear the crown. It is fascinating that Freeland only has 25 odd endorsements and struggling in fundraising. Depending on what number you look at, she's either 3 times behind Mark Carney in fundraising or 9 times behind Mark Carney in fundraising. I think it's also a testament to what we have been picking up for a while, and you would have heard this from a lot of the MPs in Atlantic Canada, that Freeland wasn't the most popular among her peers. And while they may have praised her for putting the knife in Justin Trudeau, they are not jumping on board her campaign crusade. So I don't know if Mark Carney was in the race that she'd win. I think it might still be somebody else who put their hat in the ring who would be the victor.
What do you think the mood of the Conservatives is right now, Pierre Poilievre, and how they're viewing all of this? How do you think they're feeling about all of this?
I think they still have a healthy dose of optimism about their chances. I mean, I don't know if you're getting those ads on Rogers, but I keep hearing a heavy volume of Conservative ads on VOCM talking about the contrast between the Conservatives and Mark Carney-led Liberal Party. And you heard Pierre Poilievre yesterday call it the Carney-Trudeau Liberals. I mean, they're hard into that, so I think they recognize where the puck is going there. I think they also recognize that there's also a challenge with volatility at the moment, and Trump's changed the equation. But I think they still remain confident. But they're more mindful now that this is not going to be, at least according to data right now, a walk in the park, that they're going to have to do more work if they want to win the election.
All right, Poilievre suggesting that Carney uses slogans. I mean, Poilievre that's basically what he has become, as a walking slogan, is he not?
Yeah, and look, that drives me nuts. All politicians that do that only speak in jargon, that happens. Mm-hmm. But it seemingly has worked for him. I guess until it stops working for him, he's going to continue to be a walking slogan. It will be fascinating when Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre debate in a national election campaign, should that happen, to see how that all plays out. I mean, Poilievre has proven himself to be an adept political communicator, and so far not a massive slide in that regard, but he may also have to up his game. Look, he can be, and I think I didn't go to cover his speech last Saturday in Ottawa, but real life I was out with my son playing hockey. But people who covered it said, he was a bit more substantive, and he can speak substantively to policy issues, but I think his method of practice is that doesn't penetrate the immediate public psyche. But he may have to speak more substantively to policy issues as we go forward.
Yeah, and lastly, I heard yesterday you guys had a pretty fulsome debate on Power and Politics about the CBC, and
Pat got mad at me for saying it was self-indulgent, Todd. And I love David Cochran. We're good friends, but I will say again what I've said. CBC has been really good to me. I have had a lot of opportunities because of the CBC, but I think there are certainly people, as you know, who care about the future of the CBC. I do, as somebody who grew up on it, and local radio being vital in my part of the world as it is in Nova Scotia. But I just think, it happening now says the Liberals weren't as committed as they were, with Pascale St-Onge coming out with her platform now. And I think, it creates ammunition for Poilievre that the government and the CBC are talking about the CBC while the rest of the country is talking about the threats of Trump and their wallets. And now the CBC for certain has a role in there, as does Rogers, where you and I are speaking today and telling the story, and there is threats to journalism and all of that, but there's more than one tool.
Yeah, and I guess that dealing with corporate bloat and that's an issue. The management and the corporate bloat at CBC is something that needs to be addressed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think, I think anybody who works at CBC would agree with that too. Off air, they would tell you that. I think the CBC has done some great things, but like every other organization, you can't just get fat and not respond to where the audiences are. And even as a public service broadcaster, you got to mix it up a little bit. And I think how they deliver news, what they might want to do, who delivers it. I mean, Utah, I'm sure the Halifax CBC people will say, they aren't big fans of Toronto always delivering the news, more regional news, more work like that needs to be done. So cutting some of the bloat in other areas and focusing on what they do really well, like news and information gathering, and making it more regionally specific could be something that'll revitalize their prospects with the Conservatives going forward.
Always great, Tim. Appreciate it, pal. Thank you.
Take care, buddy.
All right, take care. Tim Power, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. The recent budget not nearly bold enough, that according to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Christine Saulnier when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, the Nova Scotia recent budget, time to raise our expectations and unlock potential for everyone. Christine Saulnier, Director of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives-Nova Scotia, joins us to talk about this. Christine, thanks for joining the show.
Good morning.
All right, so what were the shortcomings in this budget, in your opinion?
Well, for us, it's really about looking at how do we understand who benefits from both the tax cuts that are historic and the spending that exists in that budget. And there's some real lost opportunities. I mean, the government's own framing is unlocking our own potential. And I'd say whose potential? Because when I think about people who really want to be reaching their potential and what stands in their way, I mean, housing insecurity is definitely one. Not being able to access affordable housing, not being able to afford the housing you're in. We have 515 units of public housing in this budget, in the capital budget. That is not enough. That isn't nearly going to even put a dent into what's needed. Good to see the income assistance rates are being tied to inflation, but people are so far below the poverty line who are receiving income assistance that will do very little. It just means that they're, not having the little amount they have eroded by inflation. mean, those are some examples. Of course, there's some things in there that are important, but when you're looking at a tax cuts of $500 million, you do have to ask yourself, let's put that into perspective of what we could have done with that.
All right. Well, so what should the numbers look like when it comes to housing? What should we be building? How much should we be investing?
I mean, the government's own housing needs assessment report said that we're going to need 100,000 dwelling units by 2032. That's about 10,000. What portion of that needs to be public housing? Well, this is the government's portion. We've said at least 30,000 needs to be public housing. Housing that's outside of the market. And I think that's what's missing for me in this report is the recognition that we need to be doing the bottom-up stimulation. We need to be supporting those who really will never be served by the market. There's no profit to be made when you're receiving income that is so low, whether you're on income assistance or you're actually earning minimum wage. It's very difficult to be making profit off of them, and we know that they need housing. So that is also what I'm saying about, how do we weigh budget decisions? Well, what is the role of government? It really is about that piece. The market won't serve certain parts of the population. What else can we do to ensure that people aren't always just, scared about going to the grocery store, scared about their next bill? And I do think that there are some missed opportunities there as well. The whole notion that resource jobs are going to trickle down and that's how we're going to solve poverty. We haven't seen any investments in the Nova Scotia Child Benefit that will really address it. We're seeing worsening child poverty. That's where we're losing the potential. We want to unlock the potential. Every day that children are living in poverty, we are taking away some of that potential from them. So the urgency isn't there. And we're facing all of this tariff threat. Well, really what's in here? So we have $200 million in some kind of fund that maybe we can use. But what are we doing to diversify the economy that isn't going to actually destroy our environment? There's so much that we could be doing here, that takes out some of the, what we have to pay in pocket. So making public transit more affordable, expanding healthcare. And when we think about childcare, for example, that's the most significant investment we've seen in childcare. There's nothing new in this budget. It's the same bilateral. We know we need an expansion. That could save families up to $6,000 a year. That pales in comparison to the kind of investments that we've seen here and the $500 million tax cut. So I think, when we think about unlocking people's potential, it's also about education. We're nearing $10,000 a year for tuition in this province. That is formidable. If you don't have the money, that's significant debt that you're coming out with. So what are we doing to ensure that there are spaces in our community college, that our post-secondary education is affordable? That's how we really help people reach their full potential.
All right. Under the current tax regime, is there enough money there, do you think? Or do we need to grow the tax base in order to meet some of these increased stresses?
Well, I do think that a $500 million hole, which of course obviously will increase because that's not just a one-year thing, that's an ongoing, is a concern. It's a lot of money. We could have thought about what that might look like if it was more progressive. So how do you better help people who are struggling to pay for their groceries? It's a significant amount of revenue loss, and at a time when there is uncertainty about what's coming next in terms of the tariffs and all of that. We need to be figuring out how to replace some of what we import here. We need to be investing in our farmers. We need to be investing so that we make sure that we are more able to meet the needs in our community. So I am concerned about how much is coming out, given the opportunity costs here.
Right, and of course, with housing, the longer we put it off, the more the problem develops, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we also point to the rent supplements. That does help people. When you're looking at spending 30% of your income on rent, lots of people spending 50% of their income on rent, any increases there means that you may well lose your housing. There's only 400 additional rent supplements in this budget. And again, we know that at least 30,000 households in our province are paying more than 30% on their income, or at least a portion of that. That's $400. It's a drop in a bucket. And that's an example of spending that would be short term, right? So you're helping people with the rent supplements while you're building public housing and you're making sure that there's real affordable housing. Eventually, those rent supplements hopefully won't be needed because you address that. And I think that's the other part is how do we get at some of the root causes of the crises that are before people in our province? And, I don't see a lot here that's really going to make those bold investments, as we said.
Okay, Christine, appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much, and we'll talk again.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Christine Saulnier, Director, Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, Nova Scotia. Now it's time for you. What is on your mind? 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back.
Backs.
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to get a hold of us. Again, 902-405-6000. We get some open lines for you folks. Give us a buzz. Again, 902-405-6000. Canada gets it done against the United States in overtime at the Four Nations Cup. Did you watch this thing? Where do you think it ranks in hockey history, in Canadian hockey history? Is it up there with the Summit Series win? Is it up there with the Salt Lake City win? How about the Sid's golden goal against the Americans in Vancouver? What are your thoughts on this? And do you find yourself getting caught up in this newfound Canadian pride as a result of the threat of the United States, and in particular the government of the United States at this time, Donald Trump, and by way of economic threat and tariffs and his constant barbs about the 51st state and all of that? Do you find that you are getting caught up and taking part in newfound Canadian pride? And is that a good thing? I can't imagine why it wouldn't be a good thing. Also, has your opinion of Americans changed through all of this? A new poll suggests that more than a quarter of Canadians, 27%, now see the United States as an enemy country. Another 30% say they consider the U.S. an ally. Another 27% of respondents to the Leger survey said they consider the United States to be a neutral country. What are your thoughts on this, folks? Look, I've been a strong supporter and proponent of the United States of America for a very, very long time. My entire life, I've always spoken very highly of our neighbors to the south, and an imperfect country like any country is imperfect. All types of blemishes on its history. Again, like all countries, the British Empire, for goodness sakes. You could go on and with the Brits. But the Americans have done a lot of incredible things as well and have been a beacon of democracy and of freedom for a very long time as well. Again, imperfect. Nothing is perfect. But now with their president, Donald Trump, with his constant barbs about us being the 51st state and his total lack of respect towards his country, and declaring economic warfare on Canada by way of tariffs and being completely unreasonable, and also his stance with Putin. And look, it's just day after day, it never stops with this whole this whole thing. It's hard to believe, actually. So has your opinion changed when it comes to Americans, and is that fair? Because, look, I think the lines are pretty much 50-50 when it comes to who supports Trump and who doesn't in the United States. There's a segment of the United States, a large portion of Americans, who are as outraged as we are and are embarrassed by all of this. So what are your thoughts and your views towards Americans? Also talked with the Auditor General earlier in the show, Kim Adair, and she wants the provincial government to withdraw a bill that allows her to be fired without cause. We talked extensively about this yesterday. Do you agree with her? Is this bill which would allow the government, the two-thirds majority Houston government, to fire her without cause, also to potentially censor and redact and remove bills or reports, rather, from the Auditor General from ever seeing the light of day, all just on the arbitrary decision of the Auditor General? I called this outrageous yesterday and egregious. I stand by that. Do you support Kim Adair in asking for the government to rethink this and to withdraw this bill? That or whatever else you've got in your mind. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Let's kick it off with Barry. Hello, Barry.
Hello there. It was an interesting game last night.
Yeah, indeed.
Kind of shocked the way it ended that Matthews and the rest of them went up over after Marner and left David out front. I mean, a perfect game played defensively, and three of them went after Marner and left McDavid there. I mean, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
The whole tournament, the States never made a mistake like that until then.
It's true.
That was unbelievable. And hey, for Marner, had a good game. McDavid had a rough first two periods, but like they were saying afterwards, these guys had never, Crosby played 15 years ago at a tournament like this.
Yeah.
They had never faced a team the Americans never faced a team as good as Canada. Canada never faced a team as good as them. Same with Sweden. It has been that long that the best on best.
Yeah.
So it took a while for, even McDavid. He had never faced a team as good as the States or Matthews or any of them. So, but it was interesting. It shows you at the very top level. It shows the difference between that and the NHL. When you expand to 30 teams, not everybody's an NHL. Would have been considered an NHLer a few years ago.
Yeah, if every NHL game was played like that, I'd probably be enticed to watch more. But then, listen, then it wouldn't be special, right? That's what makes it special is the fact that it is the best on best. That's part of the secret sauce to why these things work.
And by the way, Trump he's tanking in the polls to a level you'd never believe.
Yeah, he doesn't care about polls. He's got a long mandate to go. That doesn't mean anything to him.
He figures if he can make it and do away with the midterms and turn this into a regime, he won't have to worry. But if he has to go to the midterms, he will not. I mean, he's tanked so far down on whether releasing those prisoners. 84% of Americans are opposed to it. 14% favored. I mean, some of these polls, his polls are lower than any other president in history.
Yeah.
So I think they finally had enough, and they're realizing how dangerous he is.
Well, until Republicans feel as though that they can't win midterms, they can't win the Senate, they can't win congressional seats, until that happens, nothing's going to change.
Unless they take over the country, then they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, there you go. And
and that's a possibility.
Yeah, well, it certainly seems as though it's a possibility, doesn't it?
There was a Illinois governor told a story about how Hitler came to power with the inflation problems and everything else, and he related it to our current president. And this is the first time a governor's finally come out and said, this is a fascist regime, It's a scary, people didn't want to believe it, but it's reached the stage now where you're getting less arguments.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks, Barry. Take care.
Okay.
902-405-6000. Aaron, hello.
Hey, Todd, how are you today?
I'm well, you?
Good. It's just a little warning to people about disliking all Americans. I can understand it, but they probably shouldn't do that. They should definitely hold their anger for the American government, that 30% of Trump voters who are hardcore. They should also understand the other 70%, a good percentage of those people were just angry, felt they couldn't vote their way out of anything. They took a shot in the dark for the guy who promised them the moon. Put all those people to the side. We shouldn't be alienating potential Americans that we might be able to entice to come up here and work, such as doctors, nurses, engineers, people in the tech sector, professors, all kinds of different. We could do a bit of a brain drain if we loosened up our immigration parameters that we have for those people and started kind of trying to promote Canada and allowed them to come up here and be comfortable. And we could benefit in that way. I mean, maybe we only get a few 100,000 that come up here to drop in the bucket to the Americans, but to our economy would be great. And I understand they make more money, the taxation's better, but sometimes security trumps these things. They might start considering those things. And a lot of them might start thinking that, with Trump's policies, it might lead to a revolution. And if it did lead to a revolution, that could quickly devolve into a civil war. So maybe they might be thinking that way. And within the next 2 years, maybe we should make it a little easier for those people to immigrate here. Heck, we could even give them refugee status if they wanted to put a punch in the eye to Trump, but I don't figure it's worth it to antagonize Trump in that manner. We could just kind of quietly go on social media, start telling these people we've loosened up our parameters for them getting into Canada, and maybe sweeten the pot a little bit for them and do a bit of a brain drain and make a little bit of a positive out of this for Canada.
Yep.
And congratulations to our hockey players also last night. That was a great display of patriotism, and we needed that, I think.
Okay, pal. Thanks for the call.
Okay, great. Bye.
Take care, 902-405-6000. Sean, hello.
Hey, Todd.
Hi there.
I want to talk about this attorney or auditor general situation here, because I kind of was a little thrown off at first. Like when I first broke yesterday and you were talking about it, I was kind of like, yeah, this is kind of weird and kind of seemed not right. And then now it's starting to come more to light that it makes total sense to me. And I say that because her coming on your show, I really think didn't do any help to her situation. I mean, she lied, for one. And
how did she lie?
She said she's independent. Like, you can't be independent and be a liberal in a majority conservative government.
What are you talking about? She's not a liberal.
Well, she was appointed by liberals, so I mean, come on.
The office is independent. It's as independent as it can be. It's nonpartisan, independent.
Well, it's not as independent as it can be. If the liberal leader is appointing the person, that's not very independent, Todd.
Well, Sean, listen. What you say? You're saying she lied. I can't accept that, and I don't accept that.
Then maybe lie wasn't the right word then.
Well, it's not the right word. She didn't lie.
But how independent can someone be if they're appointed by a leader of an opposition party?
Well, okay. What is the? Actually, I'm going to take a break and then I'm going to do a little research on this. We'll be right back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Talking with Sean. And Sean, you suggested that the Auditor General lied because you said that she claims that she's independent, and the House of Assembly of Nova Scotia appoints as a body appoints the Auditor General. That's who ultimately has that say over it. So it has to be an agreement of the House of the Assembly.
Okay, so do you think it's fair that, like, when Stephen McNeil was in government, he got to pick the person that he wanted to vote for, and Tim Houston doesn't get that option? With a new government, a new mandate from the Nova Scotia people.
Yep. Yes, I do. Yes, I do, because I think Kim Adair has proven her independence. She put out scathing and damning reports against the Liberals while the Liberals were in power. So, yes, I think that she has every right and is independent, and I believe that has absolutely no questionability when it comes to her integrity whatsoever. Zero.
Okay, I mean, that's fair, but I just think that as a conservative voter and most of the conservative voters out here, it's not gonna change our thoughts, because we see it as it is. We've given him a mandate to be a strong majority government, and if there's a chance that she could do very biased things to get in the way of that, then by all means, she should not be there. She should. So
you're making an assumption that she's going to do her job in a biased way with no proof or anything to base that on.
I'm not saying. I'm not saying she's going to. I'm not saying she's going to. I'm just saying that the opportunity is there.
So what are you saying? Every premier should get to pick a new AG? That'd be even worse. That'd be even more cause for concern, would it not?
I suppose, but Todd, at the same time, you can't say that when Stephen McNeil pointed this person in this position. It's not fair. You can't do that.
Sean, you're not making any sense. I'm sorry, buddy, but you're not making any sense.
All right, man. All right. But I don't think it's going to change.
I find it interesting, Sean, that you're the only person who I have heard from via email and dozens and dozens and dozens of emails and calls who has supported this move. Well, you're the only person.
That's not true. You hung up on Steve yesterday for voicing that same opinion.
Okay, well, he was no. Anyway,
No,
whatever. Okay, two of you. Two out of two. Sean, listen. Anyway, what?
I'll talk to you later, man. Have a good day.
All right, see you later. Listen. It's just so every premier should get to pick a new auditor general. That would how would that improve the situation? Oh, a new premier, new auditor general. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. 902-405-6000. Jim, hello.
Good morning. How you doing, Todd?
Well, you?
Oh, I thought I'd call and gloat a bit.
Yes, I figured you might.
Oh, I had to. I watched that game last night. Like I told you, I was hoping it was going to go to overtime. The only reason I said that because these teams are so close that those kind of players, sometimes it ends up in overtime for sure. But I wanted them to win in overtime so I could see the look on those American faces on that hockey team and the fans that just drop right to their shoes. But another observation I made is nitpicking. Wayne Gretzky was an honorary coach, I think, along with the other American guy.
Yep.
The American guy comes out on the ice with the team sweater on. Gretzky comes out with a sports coat and tie. So I thought that was an insult to Canada, and he's very warming up to Trump. He plays golf down there all the time with him, so pack his bags and stay down there.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised to see Wayne Gretzky because, like you said, he has become a bit of a political lightning rod for sure.
Yeah, but on a night that's patriotic and all that, where's your sweater?
Yeah,
where's your sweater? Anyway, having said that, that's nitpicking maybe, but it's there. You also asked, our national anthem. My God, who sang that? She got the words wrong. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And then the orchestra comes out from Boston, like the symphony, and they do a big deal. Of course, the Americans.
I think it was Chantal Kraviatsik who sang it, and she changed it. That's always a big risk when you change the words to the national anthem.
Yeah. The other thing is, you asked about how I feel about, or how we feel. I guess how I feel about Americans. Mm-hmm. I never really paid much attention to the United States other than their good old war movies and cowboy movies and stuff. I hate to sound cynical, but that's about it. I always felt I didn't have to worry about them, didn't have to look over my shoulder. I always felt they were a close neighbor. But now it's a completely different ball game. I've turned 108 or 360 on that one. I look at the American government as a government that's not friendly to us. This talk about the 51st state doesn't seem to want to go away. So I don't look on them. I don't say to my fellow Canadians and other people I meet that, the Americans are our friends, because right now I don't think they are. The majority of them voted for this guy. The Senate's with him. The Congress is with him. He's got his cronies around him. So, it's only natural that I would sit back and say, to look at Americans now, I'm sorry, I just don't warm up to these people at all. And the other thing is, I would caution the what I call the Trump Polyev team in the next election, and be careful, because the Republicans, some of them now, and some Americans are even looking at Trump in a different way. But still, do I consider Americans my friend? Definitely not.
Okay, Jim, and good call on the hockey game.
Yeah, it was. Thanks.
All right, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. Paulette, hello.
Hi, I'm a conservative, but I don't like what's going on. We need that Auditor General. We truly do. We need to know what our government's doing. They got to be accountable to the people. If we're voting him in there, they should be accountable. I think we should keep our Auditor General. And as far as the Americans are concerned, it's the Trump and their administration that I'm against. Yeah. There's a lot of people over there that are good people, and we shouldn't call them, we should be there for the ones that love Canadians and are not against us like Trump and his people are. That's all I got to say. Okay. And I pray the conservative Tim Houston should know that we want to keep our Auditor General. At least I do, and I'm a conservative. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. And Kim Adair began her 10-year term as Auditor General on May 3rd, 2021. Therefore, she was appointed by the Rankin version of the House, not the McNeil version of the House, 3 months before Houston got elected. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Jim, hello.
Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
You got a hot show going on there this morning. I just wanted to call and thank you very much personally for having this forum that everybody can get on and state their opinion, and how well you manage everybody in that, and with your agreements and disagreements and so on. And it's just such a great forum.
Thank you.
And in addition to that, just wanted to let you know I've continued my letter writing campaign for you to get into the Canadian Senate. So,
all right, I'll await the call.
I think you'd make a great member there. And when you go home and you put your head on your pillow, I just want you to know that you're doing a great service for the community. And it may take you 2 blood transfusion and a bit of meditation on Sundays to get ready for the next week. But it is so truly appreciated, Todd. It's a great forum.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, pal. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thanks, buddy.
There's lots of Trump stuff, but it gets me too upset, so I'm going to roll right now.
All right, pal. Thanks, Jim. Take care. 902-405-6000. Greg, hello. Hi, Greg.
How you doing, Todd?
Doing well, you?
I didn't watch the game last night because my wife was watching her shows.
Oh, really? Wow, you're a good husband, aren't you?
I got to be careful because she listens to the show.
Well, there you go.
She's retired now and she listens. She'll get mad at me, but no, that's right. She said, "I'm watching my shows." Thanks, dear. Just the way it is, eh? Yeah. Like, it goes to show that I don't have power at my place.
Well, no, it goes to show that you're thoughtful, perhaps, maybe.
No, just scared. That's the difference.
All right, I'm doing my best here. Work with me a little bit.
Yeah. Anyway, to the Auditor General thing, I mean, I respect the woman, and I do, but I think, she has to realize what her place is. I mean, the only thing that bothers me here is that the politicians are the ones who were elected by the citizens of Nova Scotia. She wasn't elected. She was appointed. And I think she's got to realize that, the government is still the ones that are there, that are going to make decisions, what is and what isn't. And, that's why we have elections, and he won a large majority. So, I mean, I think if she just realized that, because there's times when I can remember back, I may be wrong now, that she might have overstepped her boundaries on a few things.
How so overstepping her boundaries? What do you mean?
Like making comments about policy decisions, that sort of thing.
Well, that's your job.
No, but the government is the ones that set the policy, is it not?
Yeah, but it's her job. It's her job to respond to those policies and how spending is, and when wasteful spending, and how money could be spent better. And
agreed. Yeah, exactly. Agreed.
Yeah.
But that's when we could take the government and say, "No, we hold them over this. Now, listen, you spending money like crazy here. What's going on? Blah blah blah." But I'm just saying, there's a check and balance here. And I'm not saying get rid of her. No, I'm not saying that. But I think she has to realize that this is your place, okay? We are the government. We are the ones that were elected by the people of Nova Scotia, and a strong, strong majority. So, you said it yourself. He can do whatever he wants, which he has the power now.
Right, and the Auditor General has the ability and the responsibility to let us know what is going on behind closed doors in ways that we would not otherwise know when it comes to spending. And her reports aren't binding. She can make recommendations, but if those recommendations are not binding, the government and usually doesn't do anything, doesn't act on them. So it's not like she's a governing
he's
person.
He's not the only one. They all do it. They all do it.
No, that's right.
They all do it.
Yeah.
They all do it. I mean, if it's the Liberal or the Conservative, whatever they want.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We're going to do it. Whatever.
That's right. Want, that's right. So it's not as though they create legislation, because they don't. They make recommendations.
No. But you said it yourself. This is what happens when you get a party who has an election who gets a stronger majority than they had before. So guess what? We get 4 years. I mean, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So now, in 4 years down the road, then that's a different story. Then the electrical, the people, the citizens will say something. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I just think that she has her place, and don't get me wrong. But again, There's a fine line, though, Todd, between government and her. They're the government elected by the people of Nova Scotia. She wasn't. And I think she has to realize that, they're the ones that are in government. They're the ones running things. They're the ones that the premier and all this other.
I don't think she's called that into dispute at all through any of this. All she has said is that her concerns is when she does an investigation, when they decide to do an audit, and they draft a report. That report should go to the public without censorship or without a decision made by the government themselves to say yes or no whether or not the public eyes get to see it or not. I see that as a massive.
I got one question for you.
Yeah.
I got one question.
Okay.
Audit. Now, who requests the audit? Is it the government or her?
She decides. I asked her that question earlier. They make the decision as to what they audit.
She does, or the government?
She does.
Oh, she does.
Yes.
You don't think the government should have a say what gets audited?
No.
I don't know. Maybe I'm
Why
wrong.
would they? You're only going to select things that you know are squeaky clean, right? You're not going to pick a file that you're worried about.
Yeah, but that's been the whole thing. That's been going on for forever and ever. Those things. I don't know. Sometimes it's kind of confusing at that times, and there's got to be a reason why Houston government is doing this. There's got to be something that we're not seeing here, or something that's not exposed to why they're doing this. Because there has to be a reason why he's doing this.
Yeah, and for me the reason is that they don't want scrutiny, right? That's the only reason that I can conclude, that I can come away with.
That could be something, but then again, what do I know?
Yeah.
But I know what you say. It's just that this seems to me that if we elected a provincial government, we elected these people to do a job, and I think it's just that's another tool that they can use. Which don't get me wrong. And they can,
Greg, they can still do the job. The Auditor General can lambaste them and present a scathing report, and the government can say received and filed, thanks, but we're proceeding anyway, and often do. So it's not as though she can alter the course. All she can do is let the public see it, and ultimately perhaps hold some more accountability for us, the public, as to how our money's being spent. That's all. I don't see any downside.
Okay,
I don't see any downside to a robust, strong Auditor General. I see no downside unless you're a government that doesn't want to have scrutiny.
Well, like I said, you look at the government; they got a stronger majority than they did before. So obviously, they're doing something wrong. Right to the people here.
Yeah.
But again, it's a checks and balance, and don't get me wrong. I mean, the Auditor General, yeah, but again, sometimes maybe you have to define each role here. Like, this is what your role is. This is what we do.
Well, I think the roles are pretty defined already. I don't think there's any ambiguity about the roles.
No, it's true. But isn't it the fact that hey, we've been elected by a strong mandate by the people of Nova Scotia, and anybody, whether it's Liberal, Conservative, or the NDP, they got this right. They'd run with it. And that's what I'm saying. They really wouldn't care what the Auditor General would be saying. Not saying not, but you know what I mean? They're going to do whatever they want. Because they're going to say, well, we got a mandate from the people. It's just checks and balances. But
having an Auditor General do the job does not weaken their mandate in the least, as far as I'm concerned. Greg, I don't see how it takes away.
I get you too.
Yeah.
Well, now I got to go home and face my wife.
Okay, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. Fred, hello.
Hi, Todd. How you doing? Great game last night. 3-2 overtime. We're number one, not 51. I put this with the Summa Series as 72 because we were in a Cold War back then, and I'm old enough to remember that. And we're in an economic Cold War with the United States right now. So it's in the discussion with the 1972 Summit Series. Having said that, with respect to down south, I fought side by side in the military with my American counterparts, and I still have lots of friends down there. Frankly, a lot of them are embarrassed about what's going on, and they're Republicans. The big thing is I think that our federal government needs to stop talking with the U.S. and basically say, poop or get off the pot with the tariffs. I think the provincial side of the House in a different note, should continue to liaise with the people that they sell their product to down there in order to convince them to dissuade Trump from doing what he's doing. That does two things. One, if he gives us tariffs, then all of a sudden you're going to see the provincial boundaries fall, and you're going to see dairy free reign right across the country throughout there. You're going to see all the liquor going back and forth from Vancouver to Nova Scotia, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that would be beneficial to us. Also, one last item, I think that we've got to be very careful because the rest of the world, if you take a step back, is watching us very closely as to how we're dealing with the U.S.
Yep.
And they're taking note. That's all I got.
Okay, Fred. Valid points. Thanks for the call, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, here's a quick email from Glenn. It says, remind your listeners of the generator and flat screen TV scandals when the PCs were ousted by the NDP and the Auditor General doing their job discovered all these generators and flat screen TVs that went missing. We can't have the Premier being able to fire the auditor without just cause. Something is off here. It's concerning. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach it. To me, this is pretty much a cut and dry case. A slam dunk. It's a slam dunk argument. Look, I know that sometimes we have conversations, and rightfully so, which are nuanced, and there's lots of point of view, and there's lots of ways to look at it. But I as surely as I know that accountability is necessary. And when you remove accountability from any organization, you open up possibility for corruption and misuse. It happens every time, almost just about, if not every time. And when you have billions and billions and billions of dollars in which a small group of people control, and you don't have proper oversight, then you've got a recipe for some real serious problems. And the independent Auditor General, and there's no reason to call her anything other than independent, other than conjecture or whatever, to me is integral and necessary and needs to be upheld. 902-405-6000, and there'd be only one reason, in my opinion, that you would want to mix with there, or you would want to change that, and it would be to reduce the ability for the Auditor General to do their job. I see no other reason why you would embed that in legislation, in a bill. Mike, what do you think about all this?
Hello, Todd. You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing, you should try to expand your program to the weekends. You got Mr. Murphy and Mr. Kalstead. They seem pretty smart people, and there's a lot of people that work on the weekdays and can't, voice their opinion. It'd be a good thing to do. As far as the Auditor General goes, leave her alone. He's on a slippery slope here. He's doing it for his own motives. And just call up Dallas View. They teach courses on auditing for these people that don't understand what an auditor's function is. And you can call auditors in other places than Alberta and Manitoba, and they'll give you their view of why you should always reach for the high, for betterness. You shouldn't go down the tubes. He's going downhill. And if his members on his side are going with him, I mean, it's like an outhouse. You got the door open in the summer, it stinks, and it stinks. So I would say he should walk across the house and sit on the other side. Because, I mean, when you get corruption, you got to stand up for something. And this is the lady that's doing it. She's very nice on your show. I can hear what she's saying. She's right. I took a business degree when I was a kid in auditing 40 years ago. Never used it, but I'm going to tell you, you go to make it better, not worse. He's going downhill, not uphill. And I'm a little afraid with this, what do you call it, the tariff business that's going to happen to us, in that the grocery industry, for one, might put their finger on the scale. They've done it with the bread. Yeah. They've done it with packaging. And I would say that, the government should make sure they keep an eye on them, that it's not a good time to screw us over. I mean, if the price got to go up, if you buy an American product and we buy it, I can see the 25%. But you can buy stuff from Canada, and if you can't get it here, you can get it from England, from Turkey, I mean, I bought a bottle of jam the other day from Turkey. It was good quality jam, $3.50 for a 500 milliliter jar. I mean, I wouldn't want to see them jack it up to $5 because they can, to make more profit at a time where we're in a bad situation. I tried to get through to the MP here when he was in office to see if we could get Trudeau to investigate the grocery industry, to maybe appoint a panel of 3 judges, maybe get the CRA to work with them to tell them what they should be looking for, and to see what they did when they amalgamated these other 4 grocery stores into 2, and what the Competition Bureau did to limit competition in Canada, which jacks prices up. Because if you were a wholesaler from somewhere else out of the country and you sold it into these grocery chains, say for $2, and you're Loblaws and Sobeys now, no, we're not going to give you $2. We'll give you $1. They don't come in. But if you had those other 2 grocery chains there, sure, we'll sell it for $5. Frozen foods at the wholesale level have skyrocketed in the last 4 years. If you went to buy a bag of French fries, say 2 kilos, $5. Now it's 10 or 11. Investigate this kind of crap, because when you get to see tariffs coming on and you bring in stuff from other countries, it's not just Canada. If Canada can't supply us, we don't have to buy from America because you got England. They got frozen food coming in from England, Turkey, strawberry jam. There's other places, and they should think about joining BRICS. BRIC, not BRICS, BRIC, and ask Mr. Carney what he thinks about BRIC. And the reason McCartney's getting all the support he's getting from the Liberals because they know he's a winner. Bartlett had him on her show, and she was showing questions at him like a rocket, and he was answering them all, and she seemed to be the uncomfortable one. If you look at her face, it's on YouTube. Go look it up. That's all I can tell you now.
Okay, pal. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. Take care. Carl, hello.
Hey, Todd.
Hi there.
I can't believe all the people that are calling in that are negative towards the AG office there. They obviously, probably the same people that are complaining about being overtaxed, and now they're complaining about the one person who can show us where it's going. I think on what should be done here is that her office should be expanded and given more power.
Exactly.
I mean, $1 billion unaccounted for and mismanaged, and all she can do is report on it. She should be able to have the legislative responsibility to get to the bottom of where every taxpayer dime is spent and why. And I just hope that the Federation of Taxpayers are prepared to organize a serious protest if this does see the light of day. I mean, this is a dictatorial move and not government by the people, for the people. And I guess it just shows you that, if 10% or 20% more people got off their asses and voted, he probably wouldn't have got the 3/4 that he needs to do this. And it probably wouldn't have unfolded in his favor. But, I think she needs more power, not less power.
Yeah, okay. Carl, good points. Thanks for the call, pal. Appreciate it. Take care. Let's talk to Mark. Hello, Mark.
Oh, hey, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So in terms of the Auditor General, I mean, back when I was in university, I would have loved to have been able to have 2 weeks to discuss any kind of grade on an essay or exam before it became official. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a clear abuse of power. I mean, that's the only way to say it. As for Sean, his comments earlier, he did walk them back a little bit. But I mean, until we have a forest that grows auditors general, I don't know how to make a more fair process. And I think it's a shame for anybody to attack Kim Adair, who I don't know. I have no affiliation to go out and just automatically assume that she's going to be doing the bidding of the government.
Yeah, because
I think that's a bad look.
It's a bad look. Take. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then one real quick thing. I know you're almost done at a time. So one of your callers there earlier, Jim, had mentioned about Gretzky, and then the other guy, Mike Eruzione, for the U.S. So he scored the game-winning goal in
Lake Placid.
Yeah, Miracle of Ice. So I just wanted to say he was wearing a Johnny Gaudreau jersey. So that was to honor him because Johnny Gaudreau went to Boston College with his brother Matthew. So I thought it was actually a classy gesture, but I just wanted to clarify that for Jim and for the listeners. That's why he was doing it.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the call, pal.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Bye-bye.
take care. All right, and Doug, go ahead.
Hi, Todd. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Go ahead.
Thank you, citizen. Number one, thanks for taking my call. Number two, let me reiterate one of the earlier callers said. Listen, we appreciate your show, and I appreciate you, pal.
Thank you. I appreciate that, bud.
So, when it comes to Trump, I send you an email, tongue-in-cheek, obviously. Let's start calling him Prime Minister Trump. Let's invite New England, New Hampshire, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont to join Canada. As a matter of fact, let's invite all the bordering states to become part of Canada. They'd be so much better off. Todd, the problem is not the American people themselves. I'm heading down to Florida next week. My wife and I are. We have lots of American friends down there. The problem is not the American people. It's Trump. That is the problem.
Well, and I would say that some who are complicit in allowing him to operate in the way that he is have a role in this also.
No, I agree. But in my opinion, what's going to happen is Pierre Poilievre's going to be the next prime minister. And I think I told you this before, Todd. I voted Liberal for many, many years. Not this time, and probably never again. Mm-hmm. And we'll see how it goes. I think Poilievre will deal with Trump very, very well. And I think we'll be better off because of it.
Okay, pal. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. Canadian LGBTQ plus advocacy group won't visit UN forum over concerns about U.S. border. That when we come back. Canada's leading LGBTQ plus advocacy organization is boycotting travel to the U.S. and won't attend an upcoming United Nations event in response to concerns about how their members might be treated at the border under the Trump administration. Helen Kennedy is with Egale Canada. Helen, did I say Egale correct? Is that how you say that?
You sure did. That's how you say it. Yep.
Okay. Tell us more about Egale Canada, first of all.
Well, Egale has been around for close to 40 years now, and we're probably best known for the same-sex marriage campaign. We litigate, we represent 2S LGBTI people in Canada. We do a lot of research, education work. So we're Canada's largest 2S LGBTI human rights organization.
All right. Must be watching what's happening in the United States with awe, or not awe, with shock at this point.
Well, with total shock, actually. It gets worse by the minute.
Yeah.
And certainly it's having a very negative impact globally, but also it's having an extremely negative impact on members of our communities.
Give us some examples. Look, it might seem evident as to why, but just kind of humanize this for us, if you will.
Well, sure. We have taken the position that we have, first and foremost, to protect my staff who would be required to go into the U.S., especially my gender diverse staff who have X markers on their passports. They could be stopped at the border. They could be denied entry. They could be discriminated against. Should they be allowed into the U.S., if they were to fall ill for some reason, then access to medical and gender-affirming care could be denied. So these are some of the day-to-day pieces that are really impactful on members of our communities.
Okay, what about your counterparts across in the United States? I'm sure that you've got many counterparts and people, friends. What are you hearing from people in the United States? Must be a very, very brutal time right now to be an American in this situation.
It is, and it's an extremely brutal time to be a trans or gender diverse American in this climate. Most feel that they're being hunted right now. There are a small number of people within the U.S. and also a small group here too in Canada, and why they are being isolated and identified as targets for this type of rhetoric and violent discrimination is really beyond understanding frankly. And so we do hear a lot from our counterparts in the U.S., other organizations down there. And there are currently close to 500 anti-trans bills passing through various levels of government in the U.S., denying people access to health care, housing, work, simply because of how they identify. So it's really not a good climate in the U.S. At the moment.
All right, is it the evangelical kind of right that is really pushed for this, or where does this come from?
Well, I think that the political leaders see an opportunity to advance their access to power. I think that there's a base that they're playing to. But, 77 million people voted for Donald Trump, and there are 77 million like-minded people currently in the U.S. who I would imagine are happy with what he is doing. But it's having a massive negative impact on members of our communities. And really, I think that he comes for the queer community, and who knows who he'll come for next.
Is there concern that there will be spillover north of the border here?
Oh, 100%. I mean, before even Donald Trump got elected, we were fighting similar battles here through the courts in Canada. It started in New Brunswick with the government denying access to students in class being allowed to self-identify. Then it moved over to Saskatchewan, where, in fact, the government of Saskatchewan introduced the notwithstanding clause, despite the court saying that these types of policies would inflict irreparable harm on people. And as I'm speaking to you now, we're in court in Alberta fighting the same battles. So, when the state is sponsoring this kind of violence against its own people, we obviously have to take note and stand up and try and do everything we can to fight it.
All right. So the reality is, when crossing the border, you remember people may be okay depending on who they get, whoever is the authority that they are dealing with. Is there consistency? Is there walking orders at the border in the United States when it comes to passports and X's and identification and gender?
Well, I think, I don't think it's up to the individual immigration officer anymore. I think a law has been, or a recommendation, or the president basically has signed an order saying that anybody with an X marker, technically you can deny them entry into the country, that there are only two genders, male and female. And so, why take that risk when you don't know? You're at the mercy of the immigration officer at the border. But when the whole country, when 77 million people want to deny you access to the U.S., why would you go? When they want to, annex Canada to the 51st state, why would you go? When you look globally, what they're doing to international, the USAID program and the impact that's having around the world, why would you go and support a jurisdiction that really wants to deny you the right to exist?
All right. So what advice do you give people listening right now who are LGBTQ plus or fall into the category in any way, shape, or form? What advice do you give Canadians?
Well, I would advise anybody from the community to be vigilant and really ask themselves that one question: do I really need to go into the U.S.? If the answer is yes, be really, really careful where you go, which states you go into, check the local laws. And if you don't have to go, then stay home. And the other piece of advice I would say is that for allies, please stand up and speak out about some of the discrimination that we're currently seeing targeting members of our communities, not only through the U.S., but here at home as well.
Okay, it's a shame it's hard to believe, Helen, that we're even having these conversations. To be quite honest with you, I've been doing this a very long time, And never did I think would I envision a conversation like this, but here we are.
Yeah, it's hard. It is hard, but I want to thank you for having the conversation because it's important.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your time. We'll do it again.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Helen Kennedy, Egale Canada. Unbelievable times we're living in, folks. Claudia Chender when we come back. All right, Claudia Chender is leader of the NDP here in Nova Scotia and leader of the official opposition. Claudia, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you, as always, for having me, Todd.
All right, so I don't even know where to start, so I'm just going to throw it over to you. Where do you want to start?
I don't even know where to start either, Todd. It's been a long, short week.
Yeah, indeed.
So we're just seeing really a sort of shocking turn of events in the legislature. This is the first session post-election, and it's a budget session, so we came in ready to debate the budget, and what we've seen is an absolute deluge of legislation that concentrates power, that gets rid of, the communication branch of the government, that threatens the role of the Auditor General, that gives this government really unprecedented powers over everything from transportation to universities, and that changes the way that we debate things in the legislature. And then we're not even getting to the resource stuff. Yeah. But suffice it to say, this government didn't run on any of these things. Yeah. And nor were we alerted to any of it before we came in. We thought we were living in right side up world where, this session was a continuation of other sessions and we had a sense of what to expect. And instead it feels very much like upside down world.
How long is the session going to last? Is there a schedule here? There must be, eh?
No, there's not, Todd. And this is part of the problem. Yeah. We already have the weakest democratic system in the country. Mm-hmm. We have no schedule for when the legislature sits. We briefly had a law about fixed election dates, which this government is repealing. Yeah. And so we don't know. We never know. We don't know how long we'll sit. We don't know what hours we'll sit from day to day. We don't know when the legislation will come. And part of the rules that we were debating last night and that we'll be talking about today in the House actually prevents our ability to debate the bills the government brings forward almost entirely. And so already it happens lightning fast. In a week, a bill is introduced, no one's ever seen it, then it's law, unless we can delay or they change their minds. And now, same time period, but Nova Scotians might not even be able to have a say or know that the bill's there at all. So it's really troubling. It's really troubling for Nova Scotians who, during the election, wanted to talk about healthcare, wanted to talk about housing, wanted to talk about the cost of living, and now want to talk about what happens if these tariffs come in. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about any of that. And it's pretty inexplicable.
All right, on the tariffs, $200 million reserve fund, that was included in the budget. I talked to the finance minister about this, and he had no details as to when it would be used, how it would be used, how they came up with the $200 million number. Really, I don't know if they just threw a number at a board or what, but any idea where they came up with this $200 million reserve fund total?
Basically, it lets them, my understanding, which probably the minister would have told you, is it lets them borrow more money. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, and this is one of the frustrations of their budget process in general, is that in each of the years that this conservative government has been elected, and again, people think about, conservatives, progressive conservatives as fiscally responsible. This is the most fiscally irresponsible government we've had in a generation. So each of the last several years, they have spent over $1 billion outside of the budget. So now they're giving themselves an extra $200 million in the budget. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? They're going to spend the money they want to spend anyway. This increases their borrowing power. Certainly, if the tariffs come into effect, we're going to be looking for them to help affected workers and communities and families and industries. But as you said, there's no details. Like, we have no idea what that plan is. And the only concrete announcement we've heard is from the premier stumping for Doug Ford in Ontario. Like, he won't even talk to Nova Scotians about the plan. It's really insulting, honestly. And I'll tell you, Todd, in all my time as an MLA, like, there's lots of email campaigns where people flood our offices with emails, and it's a form letter, and they fill in their postal code. That's not this. In the last hour, I have received like a dozen individual emails from Nova Scotians who are concerned enough about what's happening to send me a note. And so multiply that by the number of days since this started. I mean, it's really people from every corner of this province are trying to figure out who this person is. They thought they knew. The majority, of Nova Scotians who voted thought they knew who they voted for, and now they're wondering.
Yeah, before I want to get to the domestic abuse, because this is something that you've been a champion for, but a lack of new money. Let's talk about that in the budget for the domestic abuse situation. I just want you to have time to make sure that you get that out and why you feel that's important. People know about this.
I mean, the important thing for people to know is that 7 people have died in the last few months as a result of domestic abuse or gender-based violence. 6 women and one of the women's fathers murdered. So I think that demonstrates inarguably that we're not doing enough. People are dying. And so then the question is, well, what do we do? And we know what to do. The Mass Casualty Commission dedicated an enormous amount of time and resources into laying out a roadmap for what to do, as did the Desmond Inquiry, as did a number of other reports. And what they say is that an epidemic, which is what we called this, despite this government at first saying that they didn't think it was an issue, it's now law that this is true, requires epidemic level funding. And we don't see it. So the government has a big number and a page talking about their contributions in this area, but it's all recycled funding, and they're putting a bunch of stuff in a basket and trying to tie a bow around it. Again, we know we're not doing enough because women in this province are dying. And so I was really proud to join with lots of allies and frontline organizations and families to call for this government to do more. And, they couldn't bother to send one of their 43 MLAs to be present, which I think was really hurt a lot of feelings, to say the least.
Okay, so how might funding improve the situation, like in a tangible way? How would funding work to deal with this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, the number one thing that we hear from frontline organizations is that they want sustainable core funding. So many of the programs that are funded in this area, whether they're for victim services or whether they're outreach or whether they're shelter staff or whatever it is, so many of the programs, particularly the more innovative ones, particularly in rural areas, are grant-based. So the government will say, yeah, we'll give you this grant, go try it. So then they go try it, but they don't know if they're going to get the money again. So what these organizations have said for a long time and what is recommended in the Mass Casualty Report is stable core funding. We've made some moves in that direction, but not enough. And in terms of so I mentioned some of the kinds of organizations that need funding, but one of the things that increasingly we understand is that people are not accessing services because they don't want to involve law enforcement. And so part of the work that is increasingly being identified as being needed, but which we don't have enough of, is interventions with men who have or are likely to commit this kind of violence so that it doesn't happen. Because we know that most of the perpetrators are dealing with a lot of unprocessed trauma in their own lives, and that interventions can help. Like, we can actually prevent this from happening. So Of course, we need victim services. Of course, we need shelters. Of course, we need those transition houses. They're crucial. But we also need upstream intervention. And so there is so much good work happening in every corner of this province, but almost everyone doing that work will tell you that they are stretched beyond the capacity of their funding. And so in a tangible way, more funding and more consistent funding can make a difference and can save lives. And, I should say, for people who are concerned, it's very expensive for people to interact with the justice system. I mean, you can't put a price tag on a life, but certainly jail, victim services, all of this. These are processes that are already bogged down, that cost lots of money. For every reason, intervention and early action is what we need, and we need more funding.
All right, before I run out of time, I've got to get your take on the Auditor General changes potentially to this bill. It's sweeping. It's egregious. I don't know what else to say. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this?
It's absolutely draconian, and I think that it's really scary. I think that this is a government who has shown that they don't like to be criticized. And we heard it during the campaign, and we've heard it subsequently. They want less opposition. Their new thing is talking about sort of casting anyone who disagrees with them as a special interest or a problem stretcher. Yeah. It's like, get on the bus or get off the bus. And that's not how democracy works. And the Auditor General's job is to have independent oversight of this government, and they don't want it. And so they are changing a bill to make sure she doesn't have it, and so that they can fire her with no cause. And, there is only one way to interpret that. They don't want oversight. We already have big issues with accountability. You and I have talked about that before. We could take all day, honestly. And it's not just the Auditor General, right? The things that they're doing now, the price tag for the hospital, the changes to universities, the changes to transportation, these are all things that eventually the Auditor General is going to look at. But not only can they fire her if they don't like it, but one step earlier, they can just keep the reports private and not let anyone see them. So it's a terrifying move towards a consolidation of power and a lack of democracy. And Nova Scotians are the ones who are shortchanged for that because they don't know how their money is being spent. They don't know if they're getting what they're told that they're getting. And they can't have any check on what the government tells them is happening, which, by the way, is no longer bound by any kind of nonpartisan public service caveat, because it all comes from the Premier's office because they disbanded Communications Nova Scotia.
Yeah. There's
so
another
they're
story.
Going to tell you, they're going to tell you healthcare's fixed.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you we don't have a housing problem. And the only person who can challenge that is the Auditor General, and they're taking away her power to do that.
Well, yeah, and I've got about 5 or 6 other things, but we're running out of time. We ran out of time, so it's just unbelievable. Anyway, listen, Claudia, I appreciate it. I know you're very busy. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
and
my pleasure.
We'll be in touch.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP and the official opposition leader here in Nova Scotia. In the next half hour, we will be talking about the big game, the big win with Cecil, our sports guru, and we'll talk weather with Allister as well, and perhaps a few other things. We'll find out. You never know what can happen on the show. We'll find out.
Tax.
Well, I always know it's almost time for my week to end when I am looking across the table and I see Allister Aalders, because that means it's Friday. That means it's after the 12:30 news. And I don't have a whole lot of work left to do, and I can completely zone out right now.
Almost there. Almost there.
I've already zoned out, but I mean completely zoned out at this point.
I'll just take over the next 10 or 15 minutes.
Take over.
And
just take some calls.
Yeah.
So what we'll do?
I'll answer your weather questions.
There you go.
Hey, that is a good point. If anyone ever has like a question that they would like us to talk about.
Yes. If somebody wants to talk to Allister, now is your chance. Give us a call right now. No, if you make a great point. You may have a super fan out there, or you may have somebody who has some questions. Talk to Allister. 902-405-6000. Allister. He'll also offer, beyond weather advice, he'll offer relationship advice as well.
Really?
What do you think?
I don't know about that. I mean, and I was going to say, too, like, if anyone would ever like to email or reach out to me on social media, too, we can... I can certainly...
Yes, of course, I'm only kidding
No,
around.
but
Yeah, we want more engagement from the listeners.
It would be great. I mean,
That's right.
when I was over at the Herald, we did a lot of reader and viewer questions, and it's a really engaging piece, and it's a great learning.
Okay, so remind people how they can send you some questions in advance, or if they want to.
Well, I'm on social media, so Facebook is where I'm most active, Allister Aalders-weather, or, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. Yeah. There's also my Rogers email, which is Allister, ALLISTER .Aalders, AALDERS, if you can remember that, at rci.rogers.com, and you can send me an email, and we can chat about it on air.
And in the meantime, in all seriousness, if you'd like to chat with Al on the air right now, give us a call at 902-405-6000. If you've got a question for Allister, now's a great opportunity. 902-405-6000. So first off, let's talk about the weather. Little light dust of snow this morning. Not too bad, though. We skirted what could have been a pretty bad storm.
Well, it's off to Newfoundland, and parts of the Avalon Peninsula are getting, upwards of 20 or 25 centimeters of snow today. So we're dodging a bit of another one. I know we've had two, pretty messy systems with the freezing rain and the ice, but we've been dodging these more significant snow events. The one we had today just brushed in some flurries and light snow this morning, generally just dusting to a few centimeters, but nothing too significant. So that's not too bad for late February. Spring is on the horizon. I think a lot of people are really looking forward to things starting to warm up. So
okay, we have a call.
Okay.
Doug. Hello, Doug. Doug, are you there?
Just one quick question. I know you're going through schooling to become a meteorologist. When are you going to be a meteorologist?
Hey, Doug, thanks for calling in. So I'm still going through that right now. Hoping by the end of the year that I'll have my full bachelor in science with the focus in meteorology. Obviously, I'm balancing it with, doing some freelance work here for 95.7 and also trying to be a full-time student. So just depending on how much I can take on at a time, I'm hoping by the end of this year, but hopefully by this time next year at the latest, I'll be a meteorologist and I can drop my weather specialist title.
Does that
well done. Well done. Continue the good work. Cheers.
Okay,
Thank you
buddy.
so much.
Take care. 902-405-6000. This is fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Taking calls. Here's a name I know of. Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor. Could it be? Say it ain't so. Sylvain.
It is.
Wow.
Hello.
Wow. Talking about high-priced talent calling you, Allister. That's pretty good.
This is the first time ever I've called into a show.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
So
usually it's the other way around.
So that means that Rick and me and everyone, my predecessors, didn't deserve it, but Allister does. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, your invitation to call in to talk to Allister, I think, was a good one for me. I'm always thinking about farmers out there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, right now they're planning for their spring and summer. They're always looking for moisture and good weather. So I just wanted to ask Allister how confident he feels for the next season, given the moisture we've received so far in our region. That's basically my question.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think we're in a pretty... I mean, we could... Now, people might start calling in and disagreeing with me. I think we could use a little bit more snow to really help out those farmers and the general water table, because even though it has been quite winter-like in terms of cold, we haven't had a lot of snow. There's a good amount of snow on the ground, and that's really good if we can sustain that into the first part or the end of the season and into spring and have a slow melt. I think that really sets us up for putting farmers in a good position for their season, and also, for aspects like the water table and the wildfire season that will eventually come later this spring into the summer. I think we could certainly use a bit more precipitation. Ideally, right now, it would be snow, because obviously the ground is still frozen. If we got rain and had melting, a lot of it would run off. So we want a slow melt with a bit more snow, I would say, and then get into those more, rainy systems as we start to really thaw out through March. But I do think we're in a solid position right now in terms of current snow cover, but there is the concern, which I've heard from so many people over the last several months about how we've been experiencing the drought conditions, and we were actually still experiencing them into the start of the winter season. So we do have more work to do through the spring. The snow and current ground cover is going to help, but we will need to see more wet weather as we go through the spring to really make sure that we're in a good position for the growing season.
Well, thank you, Allister. I appreciate the thorough and comprehensive response.
I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. Thank you again for all your work, and thank you, Todd. Have yourself a good weekend, and go Canada.
Okay, buddy. Take care. Thanks,
you.
Silva. All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Again, if you'd like to ask Allister a question, give us a call, 902-405-6000. So in the meantime, we have been dodging. I mean, it's as bad as it's been. Toronto has just been leveled with snow.
They've had, it was 51 centimeters from now last Wednesday up until this past Monday. They had, two back-to-back systems that brought, the first one was 26 centimeters to Pearson. The second one was 25. So they've had, 51 centimeters of snow on top of snow that they've already had this month. So they've been really, they've been dealing with the snow. No word of the military coming in there yet, because I know that's always a lingering joke people have on, that really bad winter that they had. But, obviously in a city that only usually receives 28 centimeters of snow throughout the whole month of February, they're finding challenges on how to best deal with it and clear it all out. It's, they're saying it's going to be weeks before they can really get everything cleared properly.
Yeah, our biggest issue around here is the stupid cycle when it snows and then it rains and then it freezes and then you get that wreck of crap at the end of your driveway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all about timing it when it comes to these things. But obviously, you can clear your driveway and have it down to the pavement. But the sidewalks and the streets, you're relying on the hardworking crews who are they're doing their best to get things cleared. But just out today, it's still very some parking lots are still very thick ice in them where cars were on the streets that they didn't move the vehicles off of. The roads are narrowed, so it causes a lot of problems, especially in Halifax where, there's a lot of narrow streets. But thankfully it does, with some hints of warmer weather in the forecast. And also, we're getting more solar radiation as that sun angle gets higher as we go towards the spring. It is really helping on some of these afternoons.
All right, Derek's giving us a buzz. Hello, Derek.
How you doing, Todd?
Doing well, you?
Good, my friend. Good.
Excellent.
I want to ask your friend Allister. I just purchased a couple of new motorcycles this summer, and what would his opinion be on our temperatures for this summer coming? I know he can't answer me a perfect question, but
sure he can.
What would his professional opinion be?
There you go.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you for the question. So, obviously we'll have to, assess where we're going to, the general kind of atmospheric patterns. We're currently in that weak weak La Nina, and we're going to be transitioning back over to more neutral and then eventually El Nino, which, can have an impact on our temperatures. I would say, it does look like, based on what we've been seeing that, temperatures will likely be, near and above seasonal. And a big factor in that is the fact that, ocean temperatures have been running, well above normal during most of the year, especially during the summertime.
I live on the ocean, and I can actually go in swimming with my dogs now.
Wow!
So yeah, it's a big wow for me.
Yeah. So it's so how long have you lived on the ocean? And
25 years.
25 years, and would you say it's been very gradual, or is this something you've noticed more in the last 10 years or so? Because I ask this because obviously, our climate with it changing is, it's a very gradual change, but, a lot of what we have been witnessing has just been in the last, 10 or so years.
I was just going to say, Allister, in my opinion, I believe, and I would say in the last 10 years, I've noticed a big difference because I won't wash my dogs in fresh water anymore because of all the fungus and all the who knows what's in there. And the ocean, I sort of stayed away because the temperature bugged me a bit. But now I actually enjoy it. and I think I don't know the temperatures, but there's a big difference for me. I can actually go in the water for 3 or 4 months and not really bother me.
Wow.
So, but more so in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what a lot of people are, especially when it comes to, not just the summertime, but, kind of all year round, like the seasons that, seem to be shifting, they're starting later and then ending a bit later. And then obviously,
Absolutely.
like you said, with the ocean temperatures, I mean, obviously, depending on where you are, it's still going to be a bit cold, but, it does warm up quite nicely in a number of places and, in many cases earlier than it used to.
Yeah, you've got a lot of big changes coming for you, my friend. I mean, I noticed that I used to snowplow commercially, and I used to base my pricing. I price out 18 to 20 storms a year, and that was up to 15 years ago. Now it's 3 to 4 plowable storms a year. So our weather is, as you know, has definitely been changing drastically.
Right. Okay, got a boogie. Thanks, thanks, Derek.
Thanks,
you,
guys. Have a good day.
Okay,
Bye.
take care. All right, before I let you go, weekend weather into next week.
Yep. Saturday, fine, -3 in general, mix of sun and cloud. Some flurries develop Sunday afternoon, possibly a brief period of some snow as we go into Sunday evening, trace to a few centimeters, nothing significant. Nice on Monday, and then more opportunities for some rain showers or flurries Tuesday, Wednesday. Temperatures warming up likely around the mid-single digits. So warm up coming.
Okay, pal. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, Allister Aalders, our our weather specialist, giving you the weekend weather update. Sports with Cecil when we come back. All right, time to talk sports with Cecil Wright, our sports guru. Cecil Wright, what a game that was. I mean, you couldn't script it any better, could you?
I got to tell you, Connor McDavid's unbelievable. Nathan McKinnon is as well, but Jordan Binnington, as far as I'm concerned, should have been the MVP. I mean, the guy was simply flawless, especially in the third period. When he had to come up big, he did every single time. And I'm not taking anything away from Connor McDavid or Nathan.
Yeah.
But without Binnington, no way they win that game.
Well, even the overtime, he made a couple of saves that he had no business making.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. He loves playing on the TD Garden ice. He loves it.
Yeah.
He'll have to be a future Bruin, I suspect.
Yeah, and there would have been some pressure, I would think, on the coaching staff when it comes to who do you go with, right? But their instincts were bang on when it comes to Binnington.
Well, they certainly were. I mean, he was spectacular. And you know who the general manager of Team Canada is, don't you?
I think I do, yeah. I think it was Sweeney, is he not? Don Sweeney?
That's right, Don Sweeney. So how much pressure do you think he was feeling, playing on the Bruins' home ice, and he's the general manager of the Bruins?
Yeah.
I mean, the way everybody responded was just fantastic, and you couldn't ask for a better game. That's on par with Olympic hockey, with the Stanley Cup final, you name it, man. That was just spectacular.
Yeah, it truly was. And the thing is, with a game like that, it brings in everybody, hockey fans, non-hockey fans, sports fans, and of course you had the politics that were going on behind it as well, which added so much more energy to it. It was just a spectacle to be seen for sure.
Well, I'm not even going to mention his name, but he should just keep the politics and stay the hell out of the sports.
Yeah.
The guy's on the golf course enough as it is, I say.
Would you say, Cecil, that these two teams, if they played a best of 20, would probably be 10 games to 10? I mean, they're that closely matched, right?
I'd love to see a Summit Series, actually, like we did way back in 72 or whenever it was with Canada and the Russians.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Canada and the States in a 7-game series, to start with and see how that goes. I'll tell you what, every arena that they play in would be sold out.
Absolutely. The challenge with that is finding the time to do it, right?
Yeah. And, Charlie McAvoy, injured himself, and I think every NHL team who sends a player to these teams, that's their biggest fear, that one of them will get it. Could you imagine a Nathan McKinnon or a Sidney Crosby or somebody getting injured, seriously. And I mean, all the NHL teams would be crying, and deservedly so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was respectful, pretty much. The anthems, a little bit of booing, a little bit of this and that, but I think for the most part, and none of the fights, I think, and I was glad to see that. I think it was appropriate the first time they met Saturday night, but when you got a winner-take-all game, I think they had to get down to business, and they did so. Yeah,
they did, and I'm a little bit disappointed in the whole injury factor, because personally, I love seeing both Kachucks out there. I think we lost a little bit of flavor without Matthew. I think the Americans big time with Charlie McAvoy's injury. I mean, he was smashing McDavid all over ice there a game or two ago. Mm-hmm. But that's the risk you take. When you play in a tournament or in games that have so much pending the outcome. I mean, these guys are playing with every fiber of their being, and I just think it's great for the sport, and I'd love to see more of it.
What Marchand, what do you think of his play?
Well, first of all, he didn't play as much as I thought he was going to play.
Yeah.
But, I can't say anything bad about him because, it wasn't like he made any egregious mistakes or anything like that, but he just wasn't that noticeable out there. I guess, perhaps when you're 36 years of age, that it shows in your play a little bit. He and Sidney's certainly not the same as he was 10 years ago, but, they both still play with a lot of intelligence and passion. And I really wanted to see them out there, the Nova Scotia line, just even for one shift. I thought it would have been great for us here in Nova Scotia.
And now we're going to go back to the old whole drum NHL game, which will seem kind of lame after that, right?
You're right, man. I mean, it doesn't really matter who's playing either. You can't play with any more energy than those guys played with last night and throughout this entire tournament. I thought it was good, but you know what? I got to say that you know who I thought was missing?
Who?
In the whole tournament?
Who?
The Russians.
Yeah.
The Russians. I mean, we got to get them back. And I know the whole political thing that you mentioned. I know that that's going on right now and makes it really difficult. But don't you love to hate the Russians?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a shame. It truly is a shame from a sporting vantage point. Absolutely, from a competition vantage point for sure. Before I let you go, anything local that you'd like to tell people about? We've got some basketball coming up, don't we, pretty soon?
Yeah, we've got the provincials coming up next weekend, not this weekend. But tomorrow night's a big night in the Black community because it's the Black History Month Gala at the Halifax Convention Center. Renee Smith is headlining, and the place is going to be packed. And everybody will be dressed to the nines, but not me, because I'll be helping manage the stage, getting people on and off, So I'll have my jeans on, but everybody else will be looking sharp.
And it must be time for you to get another accolade or award. It's been 10 minutes. You must be getting due for another one soon, aren't you?
See what a wise apple you are. See that? You are so mean. My goodness gracious. You wait till I see you on the street.
All right, pal. Thanks, Cecil.
Have a good one.
Okay, take care. Cecil Wright, our sports guru. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. Thanks to Vanessa Vandeness as well on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job. As always, enjoy your weekend. We're back on Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.